Hey, Andrew Masters here. Welcome to another episode of Studio Time. Today we're going to be talking about the Studio Talkback, what it is, why it's important to have in your studio, and exactly how you can set one up for yourself. I'll share how I use it in my studio, some ways I've used it in the past that are a little bit different of a workflow if you have a different interface, as well as a couple tips and products that might make it easier for you. Let's get into it. All right, so what is a Studio Talkback? Simply put, it is a communication system to be able to talk to each other in the studio. If you think about how traditional commercial studios have been designed, you have multiple rooms. You have a room where the engineer and the producer and artist sometimes are sitting and listening to the music and recording it. And then you have the tracking or performance room where the musicians or singers are. And obviously, if you have people in two different rooms, they need to be able to communicate with each other. Now, usually there's a microphone in the performance room that the performer is performing. That means that the people in the control room can hear them, but the performer needs to be able to hear the people in the control room because otherwise it gets real awkward real fast. In the traditional studios, you have talkback systems that utilize an intercom, which usually means the engineer or producer can press a button and talk, and there's a microphone in the control room that sends their voice out into the live room so that everyone out there can hear them. Now that talkback system is usually tied or patched into the headphone system, so any performers wearing headphones can also get a copy of that signal. Now, why exactly do you need a talkback intercom? Well, it's just because you have to talk to the person that you're recording. Now, a lot of us work in home studios. Probably a lot of us are in one single room. And as someone who has been working in a single room home studio for the last 4 or 5 years, I still wanted a talkback. If you have someone on an instrument, you're recording them, you're in the same room, you're working in headphones. You can't have the speakers on while you're recording because it's just gonna probably feedback. If not, then just bleed into the mic. So you gotta have some way to communicate, and you want the communication to be as easy as possible. Now let's talk about setting up a talkback in your own studio and some different ways that you can go about it. All right, so for the first example, we're just gonna do a very simple talkback setup using, let's call it a budget interface. So I have here the Universal Audio Volt. This has 2 microphone inputs on the front. You've got one headphone out. You got some more outputs on the back, and then you've got your speaker outs here, MIDI, USB-C. So this is just a standard budget, very simple 2-4 channel. I think it's technically 4 channels, but you got 2 XLR ins. If you want to set up a talkback, then you're using up half of your inputs on an interface like this. Now this is going to apply to a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 and PreSonus, whatever you're using that's a 2-channel interface. It's going to be same kind of vibe. So let's imagine you're recording a vocalist and you have their vocal mic going into input 1. You're obviously going to plug your talkback into input 2, right? Now, with this kind of interface, what's cool, and a lot of these budget interfaces have this kind of workflow, you essentially have monitor sources on this side. So you can see monitor source, output 1 and 2. So if you're recording a track or you're working in Ableton or Logic or Pro Tools or whatever it is, all of your music in your session is going to be playing back, meaning you're going to be hearing it in your headphones from output 1, 2. Now you also have the option to choose your monitor source as your input. Now if I'm recording in this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mute in my DAW the source that I'm recording, so I can't hear it. I'm not monitoring the source in Logic or in Pro Tools while I'm recording it. I'm actually going to turn on monitor source input 1, 2 right here. This is going to allow me to hear the source in real time, not going through the DAW. This is just the input coming into the device. And that's going to do 2 things. One, I'm now going to hear my vocal I'm recording as raw as it is coming in. But 2, I'm also now going to be able to hear my talkback microphone on input 2. Now, if this is the interface I'm using and we're recording and there's someone else and me, you need 2 headphone outs. There's only 1 headphone out on this, so you would use some sort of headphone distribution box or splitter so that you guys can each have your own set of headphones. You've got the volume here so that you can hear them and they can hear you, and your talkback is essentially solved. You basically just have 2 vocal mics and you're only recording one of them, but you can hear both of them so you can talk to each other. Here's a little pro tip. On the intercom version of Talkbacks, you have a button that you can press to engage your Talkback mic. If you're coming in just straight to your interface like this, your mic is just going to be live the whole time, which is probably most of the time fine. But if you want it to essentially be the signal to turn off when you don't want it and to turn on when you do want it, you could actually get one of these. Now, this is something that I would recommend if you're using this Talkback, or if you're in like a full pro studio with multiple rooms and you have people in the other room who have Talkbacks as well. This is called a mic mute. So you can essentially plug your microphone in here, come out to your mic preamp, wherever that is. But this is a little mute switch. So you can set it so that the button activates the signal. So you can have it to when you're not pressing the button, it mutes the signal. So using one of these with your Talkback setup on a smaller interface is gonna be just that much more professional. Also, you're not gonna have to use your hands at any point. You can still operate your computer and just press the button when you need to say something. That is one of the best ways to use a Talkback if you can while you're engineering and you need both your hands on the mouse and the computer and you need to say something. You just use your foot, click down and say, hey, you ready? Let's do another one. I'll give you one more example because I used to use the Universal Audio Apollos, and I know that this workflow will translate to some other interfaces as well. Now on console, the software for the Apollo interfaces, you have all of your input monitors, all the channels for your Apollos, one or however many you're using. You can see the signal coming in and you can mute and unmute and hear that signal coming through your outputs. And whenever we would record, I would have my mic on its own input, the vocalist or the drummer or whoever was recording, and I could just unmute my mic in console. At the time, I didn't have a mic mute. That way they could hear me communicate to them. Now, the jumping back and forth between windows and hitting mute sucks. So again, had I known about this and had one, this would have been huge. Okay, so that's how you would do it with a budget interface. That's how you would do it with like an Apollo interface with the software. Now for the last example, I'm going to show you how I'm using a Talkback in my multi-room home studio. I have this whole house is the studio now, and I have multiple rooms that we record in, and then I'm in here. So I need to be, and there's no line of sight. So I need to be able to communicate and make sure that they can hear me in each room and I can hear them. Okay, so the basics are essentially the same here. I have a microphone at my desk. It's on a boom arm, so I can put it next to me if I'm gonna be the person talking, or if I just wanna put it in a general direction if other people in the room are gonna be talking. Now, this microphone is connected to my monitor controller, which is a whole other way that you can have a Talkback system in your studio. I'll put a list of some monitor controllers that have Talkbacks built into them down in the description if you want to go check them out. There's a variety of different monitor controllers that have Talkback mics built into them. They're all going to have varying quality and functionality and routing and stuff like that, so go check that out if you're curious. The monitor controller I'm using is the Grace M905. Now this one's cool because it has a Talkback preamp and intercom system built into it. So it doesn't have a microphone on the unit, but it has the system for the Talkback. So in other words, I plug my microphone on my desk into the Grace M905 Talkback input, and then there is a Talkback output, which is essentially a line level output that you can then route wherever you want your Talkback to go. Now, what does that mean? That means that the microphone preamp for this mic that I'm using on the Talkback is actually built into the monitor controller. So on the menu, I can go in here and I can dial in, turn on fan of power, dial in the level, and then I can also set the behavior of the intercom switch, meaning that it turns on when I press the button and you can hear me talking through the mic. When I let go, you can't hear me talking through the mic anymore. Now, how does my Talkback mic get to the headphone system for everyone else to be able to hear me? Well, there's a couple different ways, but the way that I'm doing it is I am using these Behringer P16 personal mixers. These are pretty common in studios. So this is a 16 channel mixer, and it's, line level inputs across 16 channels. So I have a little template of how all the headphone boxes are laid out for everyone. It's the same options, and then they can customize their mix for themselves. So on one of these channels, channel 9, I have Talkback. So channel 9 on every single box is where my talkback signal is coming in. And what's cool about this P16 is when the signal is sent to that channel, it flashes green so that you can tell where the signal is on the box, and then you can set the appropriate level that you want to hear on your mixer. Now here's the thing that's unique about this setup from the others. The way that I get it there is through my patch bay. Everything in this studio hits the patch bay, but simply put, I have connections on my patch bay for my headphone mixer, and I have connections on my patch bay for my monitor controller. So I can take the talkback out from my monitor controller and just patch it right in to channel 9 of the headphone mixer. And just like that, my talkback now shows up on channel 9 of the mixer. So let's repeat that. This is the process for the control room talkback microphone. Microphone next to me, connected to the back of the Grace M905 talkback in. I turn up the mic pre. I set the behavior for the talkback switch. I take the XLR talkback line out to the patch bay, and then I patch that talkback signal from the monitor controller into the headphone mixer channel that I want it to be on. And now, regardless of whether the computer's on, a DAW is open, if I hit that talkback button, you're gonna hear me in the headphone mixer. Now here's the fun question. How does it work in the reverse? Let's say I have someone in one of the recording booths, and this, I'll give an example. Like when someone's on drums, obviously there's a bunch of mics around them, so technically you can hear them, but usually it requires you turning up the speakers quite a bit to hear them through like the overhead mics or something like that, unless they like put their face down next to a microphone or something like that, which just isn't happening in the heat of a session. So you want to have a dedicated talkback mic just for that musician so that they could communicate to you when they want to say, hey, can you take me back to pre-chorus 2, punch me in 2 bars pre-roll or whatever. Now the setup for the talkback mic in the live room is the same as you would use any other mic in the live room. You pick the mic, you set it up where you want it so that you can hear him talk. Grab one of these puppies, mic mute switch, run it through that, and then you run it through your normal signal path to the preamp that you're using, and then into an input. Now once it gets to either the DAW or your interface software, you can decide how you want to monitor that. One option is that you can have the signal come into your DAW, put it on a track, and just leave that track in input monitoring so you can just always hear it. The other way is if you have a software control panel or console software, whatever you're using, have that track just be open so that you can monitor it as well. I've been using talkbacks now for a pretty long time, and it's pretty funny that I have not had one of these. This thing is awesome. I'll put a link to that down in the description, as well as some of the other monitor controllers. We can thank our friends at Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. If you have any questions about the setup, I tried to simplify it as much as I could. Let me know down in the comments if you're setting up your own studio and you want to have, you want to have a more in-depth conversation. You can go to my website, Andrew Masters Music, and schedule a consultation directly with me. That's part of my business. I do this every week, and it's a ton of fun seeing your guys' workflows and setups and some of the stuff that you're working on. And a bunch of you have way more and way cooler gear than me, which is awesome. So again, if you want to schedule that call, you can do it at my website, andrewmastersmusic.com. All of the product links down in the description are affiliate links to Sweetwater. Again, thank you to them for sponsoring this video. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun getting things up and running in this new studio. I'm actually now opening up the bookings to anyone. So if you are on my website, you can click on the studio and you can see all the details on that. And you can reach out if you want to book a session. By the way, I'm in Nashville. I get a lot of people who hit me up for sessions who think that I'm in LA. I live in Nashville. So yeah, if you guys like videos like this, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.